That jerk said, "Your wife was blind, she deserved to get hit. People like her are just a burden on society. You poor losers are just trying to scam me. $500 is enough to buy her a coffin. If you don't like it, go ahead and sue me. Let's see who wins." I was furious hearing that. How could anyone say such a thing? My son snapped and beat that animal until his face was covered in blood. The guy refused to settle, so my son got arrested and spent 3 years in prison. I nodded. That explained why Lee Man-kang had a record for assault. What happened after he got out? He was a different person. He lost his job, just drank all day in silence, and only did odd jobs that never lasted. I knew he was hurting, feeling like he failed his daughter, me, and his late wife and baby. Xiao Yu whispered that her dad cries all the time and has nightmares, calling out for her mom in the middle of the night. The old lady looked at Xiao Yu and started crying even harder. What will happen to Xiao Yu when I'm gone? She's so young. If she loses her dad and her grandma, how will she survive? I felt like there was more to what she was saying. Is something wrong, Ms. Lin? I don't have much time left. The doctor said I have a tumor. It's terminal. I've only got about 6 months. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just worried about Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu seemed to understand, clutching her grandma's arm tightly. Does Lee Man-kang know about your condition? No, he's already in such a bad place. I didn't want to tell him. Ms. Lin, I'm begging you, please save my son. If he goes back to prison, Xiao Yu will be a total orphan. Xiao Yu looked up and said in a tiny voice, "Mister, please save my daddy. He's a really good person." Seeing the desperation in their eyes hit me hard. I have a daughter and a mother too. I could completely empathize with their situation. I went over the case in my head again and suddenly thought of something. Man-kang, does he do drugs? The old lady looked stunned, then said firmly, "Absolutely not. He's not that kind of person. Plus, he barely makes any money doing odd jobs. After buying booze, he gives whatever's left to my family. Where would he even get the cash?" I nodded and said, "I see. Let me think about what else we can do." A glimmer of hope returned to her eyes. She thanked me again before shuffling out of the office. Watching them leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that this case was way heavier than I'd imagined. Once they were gone, I picked up the case file and started reading through it page by page. At 11:30 p.m. on the night of the crime, the victim, Wang Zhiqiang, was robbed and murdered at his villa in the Jinghui Garden complex. The suspect broke in through a second-floor window, tied up the victim's wife and granddaughter in the master bedroom, then got into a violent struggle with Wang downstairs, which led to his death. After the crime, the suspect made off with valuables estimated to be worth around 150,000 yuan. The coroner's report showed multiple injuries to the victim's head and chest, with blunt force trauma to the head being the fatal blow. Plus, skin tissue was found under Wang Zhiqiang's fingernails. DNA testing confirmed it belonged to Lee Man-kang. The main witness was the victim's wife, Sun Li. She said that around 11 p.m. she was in the bedroom watching TV. Suddenly, a masked man in a hat burst in, tied her up, and then started fighting with her husband. She heard the struggle and his screams. He kept demanding money. An hour later, she managed to break free and called the police. Sun Li couldn't give any specific details about the suspect since his face was covered, but his build matched Lee Man-kang's perfectly. I kept reading and spotted a key detail. The next afternoon at 3 p.m. the police arrested Lee Man-kang at his home. He was fast asleep and reeking of alcohol. That really bothered me. How could someone who just committed a major crime be sleeping so soundly at home? Plus, they didn't find any physical evidence at the scene. No weapon, no stolen goods, no clothes, and the money was just gone. But that 99.99% DNA match was right there. You can't argue with science. I started digging through recent criminal cases to see if there were any precedents for DNA evidence being wrong. I didn't find anything, but I knew there was no way the evidence could be wrong. Still, the research gave me a new perspective. Sometimes, solid evidence doesn't equal the truth. Take the 2007 Dongping teacher murder case. They found the suspect's biological evidence on the victim and thought it was an open and shut case. It turned out the suspect wasn't the killer. They just had contact with the victim before the crime. That realization was a light bulb moment. With only 3 days until the trial, I decided to investigate the scene myself. If I could prove Li and Wang had contact before the murder, the DNA evidence would need a new explanation. I had 2 leads: track Li's movements that night and find any possible connection between him and Wang. I went to the Jinghui Garden security gate. The guard was a guy in his 50s. When he heard I was a lawyer, he was pretty cooperative. He sighed. "Mr. Wang was a good guy. He always said hello. It's a shame what happened to him." "How was security that night?" I asked. "Our security isn't exactly tight, so it's not that hard for outsiders to get in." The security guard pointed to a dirt mound in the distance, saying the robber could easily hop over it to get into the complex. That makes sense, and I noted that the window at Mr. Wang's place had clear signs of being pried open. I handed the guard a cigarette, lit it for him, and followed him over to Wang Zhiqiang's house. It was a 3-story detached villa. It looked pretty fancy, but the location was definitely out of the way. The window was clearly damaged from being forced, and the police had already taped off the entire villa. I asked if there was anything unusual lately, and the guard thought for a second, saying Mr. Wang was usually pretty low-key and rarely went out. He paused and added that there had been more visitors than usual over the past month, likely for some project